Hello everybody, my name is Phoenix Fan and welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Shield. And in this time, it's going to be Yokai Pokemon only. For those of you that don't know, Yokai are basically Japanese myths and legends, and they can be creatures from things that stem from umbrellas that haven't been used in years, swords that take over people, or icy women who wander the mountains and then freezing people. So so after we get all packed and leave the house, so now we get introduced to our three starter Pokemon that we have to pick from the start of the game. But unfortunately, because none of these three are Yokai Pokemon, so far as I know, we unfortunately can't use any of them throughout the playthrough. So I think I'm just going to pick the one that best fits me for now, and then we'll actually be able to pick up our actual starter when we do another tutorial. So after getting our Pokedex, I'm being shown what a Pokemon Center is by Hop. I'm finally able to take out the two Pokemon that I want for this run to start it properly, which is Yang and Yin, both Alolan Vulpix and Cantonian Vulpix. Because Vulpix is based off the Kitsune, or Kitsune, or Kyubi, as another name for it, which is basically a nine-tailed fox that gains more tails the older it gets and the more powerful it gets. Hence why Vulpix starts off with 6 and Ninetales has, 9. So after fighting a load of people, and along the way we run into Galarian Zigzagoon. And now, for those of you that don't know, Zigzagoon are Tanuki, or raccoon dogs, and of course in Japanese yokai folklore, Tanuki are trickster animals along with Kitsune. So after that we have a battle with Trainer Hop, and the first Pokemon who sends out is Wooloo, and the first one I send out is Anuki, our newly called Tanuki friend. So as Hop talks to us a little bit, we go to use our first move, which is Tackle. That does hardly anything to Wooloo, but Wooloo just uses Tackle back, which of course takes Tanuki down by about a quarter. We just go for another Tackle on the Wooloo, and it takes him down into the yellow. The Wooloo uses Growl, which of course lowers Anuki's attack by 1. So then we go for a Sand Attack to lower Wooloo's accuracy. To lower Wooloo's accuracy by 1 step. The Wooloo used Growl again to again lower our attack by 1. So then I decide to switch into Yang, because if Hop's going to spam attack lowering skills, then I'm just going to swap out to a special attacker. So then I go for Powder Snow with Yang. That takes Wooloo all the way down to the red. Wooloo uses Tackle, which of course doesn't do much to Yang at all. So I just go for another Powder Snow to knock out the big sheep. So then of course the next Pokemon who sends out is starter Grookey, which is going to be a problem for Yang because we just go for another Powder Snow. But not before he uses Branch Poke to knock Yang down into about half. But 1 Powder Snow knocks him down into the yellow. So then I decide to go for Ice Shard, which hits first to take Grookey down into the red. He uses Branch Poke on Yang, sending her down to 2 health, but luckily though we have an Orange Berry prepared. So then she heals up to 12 health, and then I go for another Powder Snow, but Grookey uses Growl to lower Yang's attack again. But luckily though, Powder Snow is a special attack, which brings down the small monkey. And of course Hop's next Pokemon is Rookidee, so I decide to switch into Yin, just to get Yang a bit of a chance to heal up. He sends in the little bird, which has a nerve, which means Yin can't eat an Orange Berry, so I just go for an Ember instead, which takes a Rookidee into about half health. She uses Peck against Yin, doesn't really do too much, so I just decide to keep Yin in and use another Ember to take down this little bird. Sorry Hop, better luck next time. So after taking the train ride, we hear about some Wooloo that are stuck on the tracks. So that means that we're introduced to the wild area finally. And after wandering around for about 5 minutes in a thunderstorm, we find the Pokemon Electrike, which of course is based off the Japanese yokai Raijin, which takes the form most of the time of an electric type wolf. And after doing a bit of fishing, having a wander around and finding Pokemon that we can't quite catch yet, we make our way to Motorstoke to grab myself a dino, because the family is based on a yokai called an Orochi, which is basically a multi-headed dragon, and it's normally depicted as a serpentine type creature, such as in Naruto with Orochi. And also a Seedot, because the fully evolved form of Seedot is a Shiftry and is based on a Tengu, a Japanese wind and forest guardian that looks like a bird. So then after we meet all the gym leaders after doing a bunch of stuff, on Route 3 we run into a Growlithe, which is of course based on the Kamenu, or Japanese lion dogs, and these yokai are often in statues that you see guarding the entrance to shrines, or sometimes they can be inside the shrine themselves. You can also see this design a lot clearer in Hisuian Growlithe and Hisuian Arcanine, because they're part rock type as well as fire. And then after quite a few tough battles, Seedot evolves into a Nuzleaf. So then we head into Galar Mine and do some stuff in here. So then we run into Beat, who wants to have a battle with us, so of course we oblige. And the first Pokemon he sends out is Solosis. So we send in Nuzleaf, who I use Astonish on Solosis, as it takes him down to nearly red health. The Solosis retaliates with Endeavour and making me down to about the same health as he is. But of course I retaliate with another Astonish, knocking the little cellular Pokemon out. And his next Pokemon is going to be Hatenna, so I swap out to Anuki. And he sends her in. She's got Anticipation, so she knows we've got a move that's strong against her. So I go for one of them, being Snarl. That knocks Hatenna to nearly half, which lowers her attack power, special attack. She goes for Disarming Voice against Anuki, which of course does quite a bit to him since she is part dark. So I decide to go for a Lick to try and paralyse. It doesn't really do too much, and it doesn't paralyse either, so of course Hatenna goes for another Disarming Voice, knocking Anuki down into 8 health. So I decide to swap into Yin, and the Hatenna just keeps on going for Disarming Voice, which does hardly anything to Yin. So she retaliates with an Ember, sending Hatenna into the red and leaving her with a burn, but that doesn't matter because Hatenna is a special attacker, so she of course hits us with Retaliate, not doing much. She gets hit by the burn. And we decide to go for a Spite now. To lower Hatenna's PP. She uses Confusion again to knock Yin down to about half. Hatenna just keeps on being burnt. So we can either take our time or hit her again, but I decide to hit her again with a quick attack to finally knock her out. His next Pokemon is Gothita, so I decide to keep Yin in. So he sends her out. I go for a newly learnt Incinerate, which knocks Gothita down by a quarter. She retaliates with a Psybeam, I think that was. I go for another Incinerate, knocking her into the yellow. She goes for another Psybeam, which of course knocks Yin out. So I decide to send in her sister, Yang. And go for a quick Spite. Before before being hit by another Psybeam for not too much damage. Then I go for an Icy Wind with Yang. Knocking the Gothita down into the red, but lowering its speed. Gothita is competitive though, so her special attack raises sharply. She then decides to go for a Tickle on Yang, lowering her attack and defense 1 step each. So after being tickled, she goes for an Ice Shard to knock out the little troublesome Pokemon. And that's Speed out. So after making our way out of the mine onto Route 4, we managed to run into a female Eevee, which of course some of the evolutions are based on yokai, but of course I'm not going to show that off yet. And after looking up some more yokai, I go and run into a Pumpkaboo, because I found out that, Pumpkaboo aren't just little pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns. They are a yokai called Kasadate Yurei, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and they're basically the spirits of mothers who have died in childbirth or shortly after childbirth, and then they inhabit objects to become closer to children. So that's why Pumpkaboo is ghost and grass type, because it is a ghost of a mother that died. Fun! Then after all that fun stuff, we do a light bit of farming. We're finally able to face Milo. He starts off with his Gossifleur. And we start off with Yang, of course. And our first move is going to be Icy Wind, which we managed to hit. And that takes Gossifleur all the way nearly down into the red, and it also lowers his speed. Gossifleur retaliates with a rapid spin, which does hardly anything to Yang, but it does raise up Gossifleur's speed again. So now it's neutral. So I decided to go for an Ice Shard with Yang, to knock Gossifleur out. So then Milo sends out Eldegoss. So because I know his first move is going to be his Dynamax turn, I'm going to go for an Ice Shard and just stay in with Yang. And after doing so, Yang's able to fire off a weak Ice Shard. So after doing so, Yang's able to fire off a weak Ice Shard. He goes for Max Overgrowth, which of course does quite a bit of damage to the undynamaxed Yang. And it also sets some grassy terrain on the field, so now we heal each turn. So now because we've had a turn of Dynamax, I'm going to switch into Yin. I switch into Yin because we've had a turn of Dynamax. Milo goes for another Max Overgrowth from Eldegoss, which leaves Yin on 7 health. Luckily though, Yin recovers a little bit of health because of the grassy terrain, but so does Eldegoss. So now to waste out his third turn, I'm going to switch into Dino. And the third and final Dynamax move is Max Overgrowth yet again. The knocks Dino nearly to half health. We both recover a little bit. And she goes back to normal size. So we'll go for Dragon Breath with Dino, but not before Eldegoss goes for Magical Leaf, knocking him down to 14 health. The Dragon Breath hits, not doing that much to Eldegoss, but does leaving him paralysed. I swap into Nuzleaf to heal. Eldegoss hits him with Leafage. I switch back out into Yin. I go for a Dynamax on my own. And one Max Flare later, Eldegoss goes down. So with the first gym done, we get our badge from Milo, receive the TM for Magical Leaf. On Route 5 I stop these guys from stealing a bike. We quickly beat Hop in another battle. We make it to Hulberry. I go back to the wild area and do a bit of fishing. And we manage to hook ourselves a Barboach. Now Barboach's evolution with Cash is based on the yokai called Namazu, which is basically a giant catfish that sleeps underneath Japan, and every time it wakes up it is said to cause earthquakes, hence the water and ground typing. We do some puzzle solving. The challenging the second gym leader, Nessa, who starts off with her Goldeen. And I start off with Kaminari. So the first thing I do is start off with Shockwave, but of course Goldeen gets a Water Possum first. That leaves Kaminari down into the yellow because it was a crit. Ow. But yeah, luckily Shockwave hits, manages to knock Goldeen into the yellow as well. So I decide to go for a quick attack to see if I can knock the Goldeen down, which she doesn't. She goes for another Water Pulse. Oh god, leaving Kaminari on 3 health. So again I just decide to go for another quick attack to take the Goldeen out. Her second Pokemon is Arrokuda. And because I misclicked, I've got to switch out to I've got Resident Tengu Nuzleaf. So of course Arrokuda gets a free hit in the form of Aqua Jet, which does hardly anything to Nuzleaf. So I go for a Razor Leaf before it goes for another Aqua Jet. The Razor Leaf manages to hit, one-shotting Arrokuda. So now Nessa's down to her last Pokemon, Dreadnought. So I decide to keep in Nuzleaf. But before I can hit it, Nessa Dynamaxes it. And she uses Max Strike, which takes Nuzleaf down all the way to 8 health. And it lowers his speed. But luckily the Razor Leaf does hit, sending Dreadnought into the yellow. So I decide to swap into Dino. And because of swap, she goes for Max Strike again, which leaves Dino all the way up to 11 health and lowers his speed again. But of course that's 2 turns of her Dynamax used. So now I'm just going to switch out again into Eevee. And she just goes for another Max Strike. But this time it one-shots poor little Eevee. Sorry, buddy. But because that's the last turn of Dynamax, I send in Yin just before the Tortoise goes small again. So I decide to try and use Confuse Ray, which hits. But Dreadnought goes for Razor Shell, which of course one hits Yin. But I did manage to confuse him. So then I send in Barboach. Dreadnought snaps out of confusion, do another Razor Shell. Hitting him as well before we can do Water Pulse. I emerges to send in Dino. So I could use a Super Potion on Nuzleaf. Dreadnought goes for a Headbutt, knocking Dino out. But Nuzleaf comes back in. Dreadnought goes for a Headbutt, knocking Nuzleaf nearly into half health. But we manage to retaliate with a Razor Leaf, finally knocking the giant snapping turtle out. Cool boy. But now that's badge number 2 down. We have a word with Eliana. We have another battle with Bede. We managed to beat him with a few casualties. So after going to heal up, I made my way through Galamine part 2. Not that much happens between the cave and here, so we go to sleep for the night. And as soon as we do that, Marnie wants to have a Pokemon battle with us, so of course we oblige. So then after another good night's sleep, we make our way into the gym. And during the gym trial, we managed to capture a Sizzlipede, which is a Omukade in Japanese yokai, which is basically a giant centipede so big that it can wrap itself around mountains. And you can especially see this in Sizzlipede's evolution, Centiskorch, because it says it has the dragon-like features as well. And in some depictions, it can breathe fire. He was our second Pokemon yokai in this challenge. Now Litwick and its family are based off the Hitodama, which are basically souls that like to possess candles and light sources. And also, just like Litwick's Pokedex entry, anyone who comes into contact with this yokai likes to follow it because it's its glowing light. But unfortunately, the person is getting their life force leached by this malicious. And after catching some more yokai, we finally get to face against leader Kabu, who starts off with his Ninetales. And I come out with Barboach, because unfortunately we didn't get quite enough XP or levels to evolve into Whiscash just yet. So yeah, I'm going to start off with Water Pulse. And yep, just as I predicted, Ninetales is going to start off with Will-O-Wisp to try and burn Barboach. So now physical attacks are cut in half. But luckily though, we use Water Pulse to knock Ninetales down a little bit. But it does confuse Ninetales too. Yeah, we're chipped down by the burn a bit. So yeah, just going to keep on using Water Pulse. But Ninetales is faster, but she is confused. And she managed to hit herself with Confusion. Okay. Yeah, we managed to hit another Water Pulse to knock Ninetales down into the yellow now. And unfortunately, we are still burnt. Because Ninetales is confused now, I think I'm going to try and use a burn heal on Barboach. Ninetales is still confused. But she just managed to get an Ember off, which does leave Barboach / Namazu nearly half health. So again, we're going to go for another Water Pulse. And the confused Ninetales hits herself again. So Water Pulse lands nicely, nearly knocking the Ninetales out. But this time I'm going to go for Water Gun after Ninetales goes for another Will-O-Wisp. But luckily for us, Water Gun does manage to knock her out. I choose to switch into Yin because he's going to send out his next Pokemon, which is of course his Arcanine, who of course has Intimidate. So Yin's physical attack falls. So the first thing we're going to try and do on Arcanine is confuse Ray, but he hits me with a bite. Flinching Yin, so we can't move. Okay then, Arcanine goes for another bite. So yeah, unfortunately does take Yin down. Okay. I was just trying it because I didn't know if it was a high roll or not. So secondly now, because he's just going to try and flinch lock us, to send in Orochi. He goes for a Flame Wheel on Orochi. That doesn't really do that much. So we go for Dragon Breath back on Arcanine. That knocks Arcanine's health down by a smidgen. So I'm just going to keep on doing that. And after quite a few turns, Arcanine goes for another Flame Wheel on Orochi. It doesn't really do much, even though we are burnt. And then one more Dragon Breath. Man, just about leaves him on a smidgen of health. And finally, after quite a few turns, he goes for his Flame Wheel. Doesn't do that much to Orochi, so we just retaliate with a bite, knocking the Arcanine down. And of course, the last Pokemon is Center Scorch, who I told you about was Omukade earlier. So yeah, I know he's going to go for his Gigantamax turn this one, so I think I'm going to just use this time to heal up. And he does so, before going for his Gigantamax move, which is Max Flutterby, which of course one-shots Orochi, because it is super effective. So I send out Eevee to use up another one of his Gigantamax turns. But his next move is G-Max Sentiferno, which of course knocks Eevee down. So my next one is going to be Anuki to come out now. He uses Max Flutterby again to unfortunately take her down too. And of course on this turn he goes back to normal. And Barboach is out now. So I'd try and go for Water Pulse, but Center Scorch uses Smoke Screen to lower our accuracy by one stage. But Water Pulse does go through. And we don't really do that much to Center Scorch, so we do have to be really careful here. But we do manage to confuse him. So because he's confused, I decided to use a full heal. Center Scorch uses Bug Bite now. To leave Barboach on full health. So now we use an energy powder on Barboach. Center Scorch is still confused. And he managed to hit himself, which does quite a bit of damage actually. So I go to use another water pulse, but he goes for another smoke screen, lowering our accuracy one more step. But luckily for us, though, we do manage to hit, landing Centre Scorch and half health. So we just decide to do the same thing again, but he uses the Bug Bite to leave Barboach on 1 health just before Water Pulse hits, knocking him down nearly into the red now. He gets off another Bug Bite, which does unfortunately knock out Barboach. So, on to attempt number 2. While I was running around in the wild area, I came across a female Snorunt. Now Snorunt are based off a yokai called a Zashiki Warashi. Sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation, but yeah. And they're basically childlike spirits who wander into people's homes, and it is said that those who look upon them are said to have good luck. And also, Snorunt is based off a story about an old man and a woman who got lonely in the snowy mountains, so they built themselves a snowman. The snowman then came to life in the form of a little child wearing a triangular snow hat. And this gave the old man and the woman much joy, but unfortunately when the spring and summertime came, the snowman melted and then the child's spirit faded away. So after quite a bit of training running around the wild area, I now have Namazu as the Whiscash, and we also have a Nekomata now, who is an Espeon. And now a Nekomata is basically a cat that has 2 tails and has very strong psychic powers. And they could also be kind of tricksters, but normally they use their powers for helping people. And while I'm running back up to the Pokemon Gym for the second time, we also have other examples of Nekomata in Pokemon, such as Meowstic and Mew, Mewtwo, and kind of Indeedee-ish. Although I know they don't have 2 tails, but yeah, they're basically psychic cats, so there we go. And now we're on to round 2 again. And of course he sends out his Ninetales first. And I have Namazu at the front, and of course Ninetales goes for Will-O-Wisp, which leaves Namazu with a burn. And we about half hit it with Aqua Tail. Baba goes for Fire Spin, which does hardly anything to Namazu, and because Namazu is burnt, I decide to go for Water Pulse, which takes down the Fiery Fox. His second Pokemon is Arcanine, who Namazu quickly dispatches with a Water Pulse. And because he's going to send out a Cinder Scorch now, I switch into Yin. He manages to get in and hit him with Extra Sensory. B goes for Max Flutterby. But of course that doesn't one-shot Yin and leaves her on 14 health. But it does unfortunately cut her special attack. So we use a Burn Heal on Namazu just before Yin gets taken out with a Max Flutterby. But I decide to send in Namazu again, while I heal him with a Super Potion, just before he goes for Max Flutterby. Not doing really that much to Namazu. He goes small again, before using Bug Bite, and I finish him off with an Aqua Tail. And after the battle, Kaminari evolves into Zinogre, and Anuki evolves to look more like a badger. And of course we finally get our 3rd badge. So after we get sent off by these 3, each challenges Hop to a battle. While we're in the wild area, we run into a Duskull, which is a Sukume Gami, or more specifically a Chochin Obake, which are basically paper lantern ghosts. Or more specifically, these type of yokai are basically ghosts that inhabit paper lanterns. And I also found myself running into a Bronzor, which is a type of yokai called an Ungaikyo, which is basically a haunted mirror that after it reaches 100 years of age, it becomes a yokai. And also there's a very, very old story about Bronzor is an old mirror that didn't want to be given away by a lady to some priests who wanted to melt it down and turn it into part of a bell. So after doing a bit more running around the wild area, I make my way into Hammerlock, But after doing a load of stuff there and coming across Route 6, we find ourselves on Stone's side, where after talking to Hop, we quickly beat him in a battle. And after doing a load of stuff, we fight against Gym Leader Alistair. And of course his first Pokemon is Galarian Yamask. And we start off with Orochi. And of course we're going to go with Crunch first. Which is one-shots a Yamask, okay then. But because of Yamask's ability we now get Wandering Spirit, but that doesn't matter because it's gone. And as Alistair's second Pokemon is Mimikyu, so I decide to switch her to Anuki. And because of Disguise, the first thing I'm going to do is use Pin Missile, but not before Mimikyu uses Hone Claws to up his attack by 1 step. And the reason why I went for Pin Missile is because it's a multi-hitting attack, and of course Mimikyu has Disguise, which breaks as soon as he gets hit once. So which means of course we're able to hit him now. So now I decide to switch out in the newly evolved Ungaikyo, which is of course a bell. And Mimikyu uses Hone Claws to up his accuracy and attack again. So the first move I'm going to use with the newly evolved Bronzong is Heavy Slam, just after Mimikyu uses Baby Doll Eyes to lower his attack of course. And Heavy Slam does hit. And it hits really hard because it now one-shots the Mimikyu. And the next Pokemon is Cursula. And I decide to switch it to Anuki again. And the first move that Cursula uses is Curse. So she cuts her own HP in half. I have to put a curse on Anuki, which means of course every round it takes about a sixth of Anuki's health. So the first move we use back is Night Slash, which takes down the rest of Cursula's health. Thank you for the curse, buddy. Anuki takes curse damage, and Alistair sends out his most dangerous Pokemon, Gengar. And now because I know that Gengar's gonna Giant Gigantamax this turn, I'm gonna switch. Actually no, I'm not. I'm gonna heal up a bit. So just to waste one of Gigantamax Gengar's turns, I heal up a bit. And Gengar's first move is Max Ooze, which of course does quite a bit of damage to Anuki, but it's not enough to one-shot him. So that's Gengar's first turn. But unfortunately then that does raise Gengar's special attack. And even more unfortunately, because of the curse by Cursula, Anuki faints. So now I'm going to switch out to Orochi, who sneakily goes in for Night Slash, and any unsuspecting people wouldn't know it's not actually him. But of course that takes Gengar down into the yellow, but Gengar uses Max Ooze, which of course reveals the imposter, being the newly evolved Zoroark. So now I send in the actual Orochi, and I choose to Dynamax in this turn. Gengar uses Max Ooze in his last turn, which unfortunately one-shots Orochi, which I didn't think it was going to do, and it raises Gengar's special attack again. So I decide to send in Ungaikyo, and yes, I know this is very risky in Gengar's current special attacking condition, but luckily for us the year does go back to normal. So after a few turns, this is the situation here. I've got Ungaikyo at half health, and Gengar's special attack +3, plus he keeps on hexing and one-shotting all my peeps, so I might have to come back after I've leveled up quite a bit and see what happens then. And one of the things I do is evolve Vulpix into Ninetales. I do a load of max raid battles. And while running around the wild area, we run into I spot a Sneasel's head in the grass, and of course, for those of you that don't know, Sneasel is based on a Kamiatachi, which are basically weasel-like creatures, and they always hunt in threes. And basically, if you ever feel a cold shiver up your spine, or on your arm, or out for a walk, or just sitting down, it's a Kamiatachi. Because one of them cuts your arm or chops your arm off, the other one sews it up, and then the last one I think heals your arm, so you won't feel anything or see that there's a scar there. So yeah, they're basically the Japanese yokai issue for if you suddenly feel a cold sensation in a part of your body. But yeah, they're really, really cool creatures and one of my favourite yokai. So then I'm back for round 2, which pretty much goes like this. I start by sending in a Orochi. And a one-shot Yamask with Crunch. I switch into a Nuki just before he sends in his Mimikyu. Now with a Nuki, go for Pin Missile just after Mimikyu uses Hone Claws. The first Pin Missile shot gets rid of Mimikyu's disguise, which then allows me to bring it out to yellow health with Night Slash. And I finish Mimikyu off with a Heavy Slam. I switch in Orochi as she sends out a Corsola. Now Orochi mysteriously uses Night Slash to one-shot Corsola. I choose to Dynamax Zora. And then I manage to one-shot Gengar with Max Darkness. So then we finally get our 5th badge. We stop Beat from wrecking the place by swiftly Night Slashing his team with Zora disguised as Anuki. He makes that face, and then after some more plot, so after walking through Glimwood Tangle where there are surprisingly no Yogai Pokemon, we make our way through Ballonlea. We answer a load of trivia questions, and then we get a fight with Gym Leader Opal. And our first Pokemon is Galarian Weezing. And of course we send out Ungaikyo. And then my first move is going to be your Iron Head. But of course the Weezing uses Fairy Wind, which doesn't do anything to Ungaikyo. And that was a crit, so yeah, really didn't do much. So your Iron Head hits. But to take the Galarian Weezing down into the yellow. Oh, and we have to answer a question. Do we know her nickname? Yes, it is the Wizard. So that means that one of his stats get randomly raised, and it's Ungaikyo Speed. So that means that we outspeed Galarian Weezing and take her down. Alright, this second Pokemon is Mawile, another yokai, but I can't get in Pokemon Shield, unfortunately. So I'm going to go for Iron Head again, just to see how much damage it does. It does about a third health of Mawile. He uses Crunch, which of course is super effective against Ungaikyo, but doesn't do too much damage, but his defense does fall, so we need to be careful now. So I go for another Iron Head, taking Mawile down into the yellow. She uses another Crunch. Oh god, which this time does take Ungaikyo down because that was a high roll. Now this time I send in Yin because I know that Mawile is part Steel. Just before we answer another question of which one is her favourite colour. Now I think this is kind of easy, but a lot of people will get stuck on this one. It's purple. So that means Yen's special defense rises properly. So then I go ahead and use Flamethrower on the Mawile. And she gets knocked out. And now this time I decide to switch into Kanamari, as Opal sends out her Togekiss. So I'm going to go for Shockwave, which does about half to Togekiss. She uses Draining Kiss on Kaminari, which of course, does nearly half, and it recovers quite a bit to Togekiss. But because of Kaminari's static, Togekiss does get paralysed. So I go for another Shockwave. To send Togekiss nearly into the red. Togekiss of course could just go through another Draining Kiss, which takes Kaminari down into the yellow and heals her back up into the green. So I'm just going to repeat Shockwave. The Togekiss doesn't seem to want to get fully paralysed, so it hits off another Draining Kiss to recover a bit and to knock Kaminari out. So now I decide to bring in Namazu again, who will switch back into the team. We get another question of how old she is, and I think the correct one is 16. So Namazu's attack and special attack rises sharply, so we go for an Aqua Tail on Togekiss, finally knocking her out. Now of course this is Opal's last Pokemon, Alcremie. So I decided to keep in Namazu, just so I can revive back up Ongaikyo. Because I know she's going to Gigantamax this turn. He does so, and uses G-Max Finale, which of course knocks Namazu all the way down into the yellow. I'm really surprised that he lived that, because I expected it to knock her out. So I try for another Aqua Tail, but of course she uses another G-Max Finale, knocking Namazu down. But that's fine now, because that's 2 turns done. So I send back in Ongaikyo, and I Dynamax here. She uses her last G-Max Finale, which of course doesn't do very much to Ongaikyo, so I use Max Steel Spike to knock the Aquaman down into the yellow, and it raises Ongaikyo's defense. So the Aquaman goes back to normal, and another Max Steel Spike of course knocks her out. I'm glad that went a lot better than the last 2 gyms. So now that we've got badge number 5. So after Opal kidnap Speed, we beat Hop in another battle. After going through a couple more of the routes, so not much happens and we don't see any Pokemon that are yokai, so we just make our way to the next area, where we make our way into the Circhester gym, where after the gym challenge we're challenged by the cute gym leader Melody, and her first Pokemon is a Frosmoth. So of course I send in Yin, and the first move is going to be Flamethrower, which just managed to hit, and it of course one-shots the Frosmoth. Sorry. And the second Pokemon is Darmanitan, so I just go for another Flamethrower, which takes him down to about, takes him down all the way. And of course the third Pokemon is Ice Cube. You do have to be somewhat careful though, because it could summon a hailstorm, so I go for another Flamethrower on the little penguin, which of course one-shots her as well. And now it's time for Melanie's toughest Pokemon yet, Lapras. Now I know that she's going to Gigantamax it, so I'm going to switch out to Kaminari, who takes a Max Geyser to the face, but unfortunately does go one-shot, but not after it starts to rain. So my next Pokemon is going to be Ongaikyo, and I go for an Iron Head, but not before she uses Max Resonance. That doesn't really do much to Ongaikyo, luckily. But it does mean it starts to hail though. And she sets up a free Aurora Veil for herself. Iron Head goes through, not really doing that much to Lapras. So now I try with the Hypnosis, even though I'm not sure this is going to work. But beforehand she hits Ongaikyo with a Max Geyser, leaving him on 6 health. But Hypnosis does go through, and the Gigantamax Lapras is now asleep. And just after that, Lapras does go back to normal size. And because she's asleep now, I decide to go for a kind of risky play and send it a Rochi. And she does stay asleep, so I go for a Dragon Pulse to just chip down some more Lapras' health. It stops though, so her water moves don't do that much damage anymore. I decide to revive Kaminari. Luckily though, she's still asleep. So now I switch back out into him. Just as Lapras wakes up and hits me with an Ice Beam, which leaves him on 9 health, even though that was a critical hit. So I try Dynamax to hit Lapras with a Max Lightning, knocking her out. So after we get our next gym badge, going to eat at a restaurant called Bob's Your Uncle. After doing a few more bits, so we beat Hop in another battle. Our Rochi finally evolves into a Zvilaus. And afterwards we make our way down Route 9, where we make our way into Spikemuth, where we have a battle with Marnie, and then just after that we run into a Delmice, which I believe has a 1% chance on this route. Now Delmice is another object-based yokai, which is basically an object or thing that gains sentience after commonly its 100th birthday, if it hasn't been used or it's just been laying dormant for so long. And in some depictions, Delmise is the spirit of a lost sailor which possessed an anchor. So Yang evolves into Alolan Ninetales. So then after fighting a whole load of Team Yell Grunts, we get a cool introduction to Spikemuth's gym leader, Piers. And as soon as he's talking at us, we get our gym battle. And the first Pokemon he sends out is his Scrafty. So I send out the newly evolved Yang. And the Scrafty does have Intimidate, which cuts Yang's attack, but that's fine. Because I go for a Dazzling Gleam. Which nearly one-shots the Scrafty. The Scrafty is a Brick Break, but that really doesn't do too much to Yang. So I just go for another Dazzling Gleam to take the Scrafty out. Now the next Pokemon is the very creepy Malamar, who I just use Dazzling Gleam on again to knock him into the yellow. Malamar uses Psycho Cut on Yin, which leaves Yin on 2 health even after that being a critical hit. But luckily now we know that Yin's faster, so we do another Dazzling Gleam on the creepy squid to take him out. Now his next Pokemon is Obstagoon, probably his most troublesome Pokemon. So I decide to heal up Yang with a Hyper Potion. His Obstagoon uses Shadow Claw, which of course does hardly anything to Yang because of her part fairy now. So I try for another Dazzling Gleam. It does hit the Obstagoon though, knocking him down to nearly half. Obstagoon just goes for another Shadow Claw. So I switch into Yang's big sister Yin. The Obstagoon uses Obstruct, but it fails because I switched and not swung. So I go for a Flamethrower, which does hit, knocking the Obstagoon down into red. So Obstagoon uses Throat Chop, which does quite a bit of damage to Yin. Obstagoon has Obstruct, so of course we can't hit him this turn. So we just go for another Flamethrower after he protects that one, knocking his Obstructing Tanuki down. And now comes our second most annoying Pokemon, Skuntank, who is only weak to one thing. So I go for another Flamethrower, but the Skuntank hits with Sucker Punch, knocking him down to 31 HP. Flamethrower goes through, knocking the Skuntank down into the yellow, nearly into the red range. So I decide to switch into Namizu, who's now back on the team. Skuntank tries to use Sucker Punch, but it fails, so instead he goes for a Toxic, which leaves Namizu poisoned. So I go for an Earthquake, knocking the skunk down and winning us the Gym Leader challenge against Piers. That's a lot easier than with the birds, Jesus. So it gives us a Dark badge, meaning there's only one more left. We make a quick hop over to Route 9, where we see that Leon is in the news. We make our way to Hammerlock, ready for the gym challenge, where after a few double battles, it is time to face Gym Leader Raihan. And now this is going to be double battle, so we send in his Gigalith and his Flygon. And I send out Namazu and Yang, first of all. And now Gigalith has Sandstream, which means the Sandstorm picks up. And any ground type and rock Pokemon, I think it is, don't get chipped down every turn. I think it's Steel as well. So yeah, the first thing you're going to do is Muddy Water, which luckily doesn't hit Yang in this generation. And then I'm going to go for a Dazzling Gleam with Yang. But Flygon uses Steel Wing on Yang. Oh my god, knocking her down to 16 health. Ow. Flygon's defense rises. Yang manages to hit with Dazzling Gleam, which knocks Flygon down to half and doesn't really do anything to Gigalith. Gigalith avoided Muddy Water, which is kind of annoying. But it still hits Flygon. Not for that much though, unfortunately, but it does lower Flygon's accuracy. Gigalith goes for Stealth Rock, which of course if we swap, the Pokemon coming in will be hit by the rocks because they don't know they're out. Yang is hit by the Sandstorm, which leaves her on 8 health now. So I'm going to go for another Muddy Water with Namazu, and then funnily enough I'm going to switch Yang into Magami, who does get hit by the stones. But yeah, Flygon goes for another Steel Wing on Magami because Yang was there. Namazu manages to hit both of them with Muddy Water, which knocks Flygon into the red and does about half to Gigalith. Gigalith doesn't do anything with Body Press. Magami does get hit by the Sandstorm though. I'm going to go for Aqua Tail on Flygon, and then Magami is going to go for a Heavy Slam on Gigalith. But not before Flygon uses Crunch on Magami, which unfortunately knocks him out because it was a critical hit. But Namazu hits Flygon with an Aqua Tail, knocking him out, luckily. And the Gigalith next move is Rock Blast, which hits Namazu 3 times, but doesn't really do that much damage. So for the Pokemon that's coming out next is Sandaconda for Raihan. And for me it's Orochi, who gets hit by the stones. So now with Namazu I'm going to go for Muddy Water, and with Orochi going to try for Dragon Rush on the Sandaconda, which does hit. And it does hit Sandaconda down into the red there. Sandaconda uses Glare, which of course paralyzes Orochi. Yes. Namazu's Muddy Water does hit, which manages to hit them both, lowering Gigalith's accuracy and knocking out the Sandaconda. Straight after that, Gigalith tries to go for Body Press, but it fails. Orochi's hit by the Sandstorm. And of course, now Raihan sends out his Gigantamax Pokemon, which is his Duraludon. Raihan goes for his Gigantamax, which makes his Duraludon look kind of like a skyscraper here. And of course, he goes for G-Max Depletion on Orochi, which leaves him on 3 health. So of course now it's going to be knocked out because of the Sandstorm, which is still kind of annoying. And Namazu hits them both with Muddy Water, which doesn't do much to Duraludon, even though it's a crit, but it does knock the Gigalith out. So now we just have the giant skyscraper to deal with. But Orochi does manage to hit with Dragon Rush though, before he goes down. But luckily for us, the Sandstorm subsides, so that means that Orochi doesn't get knocked out. But unfortunately though, he is still paralysed. So I decided to use a Hyper Potion on Orochi now, healing up most of his health. Duraludon though goes for Max Knuckle. Oh, and I'm not really surprised at Orochi, but luckily though that doesn't knock him out, but it does raise Duraludon's physical attack by 1 step. Namazu hits him with Aqua Tail, and I decide to switch Namazu for Yin now, who gets hit by the spikes as soon as she comes in. And then I decide to Dynamax Orochi. The Duraludon goes for Max Knuckle again against Orochi, which unfortunately does knock him out though, which is kind of annoying, but that does get rid of his last Gigantamax turn. So this time I decide to switch into Kaminari, who gets hit by the stones. Duraludon goes back to normal. So one Flamethrower from Yang knocks the Doran and Duraludon out. Meaning that we've finally beaten Raihan and we have all of the gym badges. So then after getting the last gym badge to complete our collection, we have a bit of a talk with Professor Magnolia and Sonia. We character train with Hop, make it through Wu-Tan, and then we end up in Winden. Snorunt evolves into a beautiful Frozlass. Now for those of you that don't know, Frozlass is a yokai called a Yuki Onna. Now Yuki Onna are normally depicted as spirits that wander around in snowy areas or high in the mountains, and they wait for lost travellers to come by so they can freeze them in place while they're still alive, and then take them into a nearby cave to drain their life essence. Now there also are tales of Yuki Onna that actually want to help lost travellers in snowstorms and everything, but because she's still a spirit, and the unfortunate thing of that side effect of that, when the travellers get too close to her, she drains their life essence accidentally. So yeah, Yuki Onna can either be really malicious and nasty, or they can be really, really sweet but accidentally drain your life away. And after a bit of wandering around, it's the semi-finals of the Pokemon League, and our first opponent is Marnie. And our first opponent is the adorable Marnie. And our first Pokemon is Liepard, and our one is Yin. So our first move is going to be Flamethrower on the cat, but Liepard opens up with a Torment, meaning that we can't use the same move twice in a row. As the Flamethrower goes through, one-shotting the Liepard, and now because she's going to switch out to Scrafty, I take out Yang, and I go for a Dazzling Gleam first, which of course one-shots Scrafty because it's 4 times weak to Fairy. And I switch out to Yin again into Namazu, as Marnie brings in her Toxicroak, So the first thing I would do is go for an Earthquake, but before that a Toxic Earthquake gets off the Swagger, which raises Namazu's attack sharply, but it does make him confused. But Namazu breaks through the confusion and uses Earthquake. One-shotting Toxic Croak also. And now I'm going to switch out Namazu with Yang, as Marnie sends out a last Pokemon, which is Morpeko. So we'll go ahead and use Dazzling Gleam on the mouse to take him down in one shot also. Also, I totally forgot that she has a Gigantamax yet, so our last one is Grimmsnarl, who is based on an Oni, which is pretty much a Japanese demon. And just like a demon, she Gigantamaxes. But Yang goes through with Dazzling Gleam to nearly half hit him. But the Grimmsnarl goes for Max Starfall on Yang, taking it down all the way into the yellow and also making the battlefield. So we just go for another Dazzling Gleam to take Grimmsnarl down into the red now. But unfortunately he goes for another Max Starfall, which does take Yang down. So to avenge her younger sister, I go for Flamethrower, but of course Anna goes for Full Restore on Grimmsnarl. But the Flamethrower does take him down to nearly half again. But because it's been 3 turns now, he returns back to normal size. So we just keep on going for Flamethrower until he eventually goes down. And then after a quick intermission, our next opponent is Hop, who starts off with this very tonky dub wall. And so we've got to start out with Yin. And so of course I start off with Flamethrower to take the sheep down and nearly into the red. Double use Body Slam, which doesn't really do that much to Yin, but it does paralyze her though, so she might not be able to move. So of course I follow up with another Flamethrower just after he uses another Body Slam to take down the very fat sheep. I switch out to Magami. The Hop now sends in his Snorlax, and I also choose Magami because of his ghost typing. So the first move we go for is Heavy Slam, which of course doesn't really do much to Snorlax. But Snorlax retaliates with his own Heavy Slam, which of course doesn't do much to the terrifyingly Ghost Anchor. So of course we just go back and forth with a load of Heavy Slams. Wow, I really do, okay. Wow, he can't do anything else to me. Until literally 6 turns later, after doing Heavy Slams, we take out the big bear. And so because Magami did his job, I'm going to switch out to Yang now, as Hop sends in his Corviknight, and I go for an Ice Beam, which takes Corviknight down to nearly half health. Corviknight retaliates with a scary face, lowering Yang's speed harshly. So we just go for another Ice Bang, but of course he goes for Steel Wing, which I forget is 4 times strong against Alola Ninetales, so Yang goes down. So I swap into Kaminari, who uses Discharge to take down Corviknight. And now of course Hop's next Pokemon is Pincurchin. That's why I start off with a Discharge, but finding out Pincurchin has Lightning Rod, which spaces his special attack. So he goes for Curse, which lowers Pincurchin's speed but raises his. So now we're trying for Psychic Fangs, which doesn't really do that much to Pincurchin. So Pincurchin just goes for another Curse to up his attack and defense again. Pincurchin goes for Poison Jab though, taking Kaminari down into the yellow and poisoning her. So I decide to go for a kind of risky play and switch out into Namazu. But Hop goes for Poison Jab, which of course doesn't do that much to him. So I go for an Earthquake. So I go for Earthquake on Pincurchin that leaves him nearly into the red. Hop just gives a go for Poison Jab. So I go for one more Earthquake, take her down. So now it hits Hop's last Pokemon, which is going to be Rillaboom. So I switch into Yin, who he Dynamaxes, and he uses Max Quake to unfortunately take down Yin. That means I get a free switch into Orochi just before he uses Max Quake again to take Orochi nearly down to half health, and he raises his special defense. So we'll go for Dragon Rush which takes Rillaboom nearly all the way down into the yellow because it's a critical hit. The next move is Max Strike, which doesn't really do that much at all to Orochi, but it does lower his speed. So I just go for a Crunch, taking the Rillaboom out, letting us win against Hop. Sorry, buddy. And then after playing some hide and seek and doing some more stuff, we head into Rose Tower. We're after a load of fights against some sunglasses wearing peeps. We face off against Oleana, who's now very, very pissed. And her first Pokemon is going to be Frozlass. So of course I start off with Yin. And I'm going to start off with a Flamethrower, which one-shots the Frozlass. Now next Pokemon is going to be Milotic, so I'm going to switch out to Kaminari. I go for a Discharge, which takes the Milotic down into about yellow health, and it also paralyzes her. The Milo tries to Cool Wing, and it does go through. So now she heals a bit every turn, but that doesn't matter because one more Discharge, and the Milotic goes down. Now I switch into Namizu, and she sends out her Salazzle. So Salazzle goes for Dragon Pulse against Namizu, which doesn't do that much to him. So I go for an Earthquake, and the very suspect Reptile is taken down. Now I'm going to switch out Namizu to give Yang a go. And because the next Pokemon is Sarina, so I go for a Dazzling Gleam, which doesn't really do too much to Sarina. And she goes for Acrobatics against Yang, which does about the same damage. So I go for a quick Ice Beam, which does quite a bit of damage to take her down. And because she's on to her last Pokemon now, I'm going to keep Yang in. And she sends in her Garbodor, who I know she's going to Gigantamax this turn, so I'm going to go for it as well. And I use Max Mind Storm on the big garbage heap to take her down to about half. As she retaliates with Max Rockfall on Yang to take her down to 29 health, making a Sandstorm in the process, which unfortunately Yang is buffeted by, but so is Garbodor. So we just go for another Max Mind Storm to knock her out. And now Leonna's beaten. We see that Chairman Rose and Leon are having a... Leon comes back with us because of the mention of food. And after a load of talking, we head into the stadium again. And we get a surprise visit from Bede, who's back again. And it turns out that he's our first opponent in the semi-final, so of course we oblige. And his first Pokemon is Mawile. So of course we send out Yin, who has Intimidate, so of course Yin's attack falls. But the first thing we're going to do is hit him with a Flamethrower, which one-shots a Mawile. And his second Pokemon is taking out his Gardevoir. So we go ahead and use Flamethrower again, which takes Gardevoir down into the yellow, but Gardevoir uses Psychic, which doesn't really do too much to Yin, but I decide to switch out anyway into Orochi. But Gardevoir uses Psychic again, and it doesn't do anything to Orochi. But this time she goes for Dazzling Gleam, which of course unfortunately one-shots him, as he's not faster than her. So I send out Yang to do an Ice Beam on the Gardevoir, which knocks Gardevoir into the red. She retaliates with another Psychic, which again doesn't do too much to Yang, but it does lower Yang's special defense just before Bede uses a Full Restore on her. So I go for a Dazzling Beam. That still knocks Gardevoir into the... So I do the same thing again, knocking Gardevoir down a bit. Gardevoir goes for Wish Stir, so she might be able to heal in a few turns. So this time I change it up and goes for Ice Beam, which knocks Gardevoir down. So now I switch into Magami, as Bede sends in his Galarian Rapidash. So I decide to go for Shadow Ball, but not after he goes for Psycho Cut. Shadow Ball hits, knocking Rapidash into the red. So we decide to go for it again, but Rapidash uses Psycho Cut to knock Magami down into the yellow. But luckily though, Shadow Ball does hit, knocking the unicorn down. Now of course I'm going to switch out into Kaminari, as he sends out his adorable Hatterene. Now I go for bite, but of course beat Gigantamaxes. Luckily though, we do manage to get the bite off, but it doesn't really do too much to the now Gigantamax Hatterene. So she goes for G-Max Smite, which unfortunately knocks down Kaminari. So I send in Yang, and I go for Extrasensory, which does a bit of chip damage to the Hatterene. And the Hatterene goes for Max Flare, which of course I didn't realise she had a fire move. So that of course takes down Yang. So I send in Namizu, and this time I go for Earthquake, which does a bit more damage to the Hatterene. But she goes for G-Max Smite, which leaves Namizu on 14 health and confused. But luckily though, this time the Hatterene turns back to normal size. So I decide to use a Super Potion on Megami, as the Hatterene uses Psychic to knock Namizu down. So now we're sending the newly healed Megami. He then uses Shadow Ball to knock the Forest Witch down. And of course beats Beat. And after a rest up, we go into the finals now, and our first opponent is Nessa again. And our first Pokemon is Golisopod. So we start with Yin. So we of course start off with the Flamethrower, which goes first, sending Golisopod down into the yellow, but because of emergency exit, he, well, exits into Barraskewda. So I decide to switch into Kaminari, and as I do that, Barraskewda uses Liquidation to knock Kaminari all the way down into the yellow and to lower his defense. So I try and go for a discharge, but the Barraskewda is faster and uses Drill Run, unfortunately knocking her out. So I send in Megami, but first the Barraskewda goes for Throat Chop, so Megami goes for Giga Drain, which one-shots her, and we heal up quite a bit of health. So then this switches into Pelipper, who sends in the rain, and then he uses Tailwind first, and then makes her team faster. So we go for Giga Drain, knocking the bulky bird into about half health, but recovering the rest of Megami's. But Pelipper uses Roost to regain that health that we just took. So I decide to go for Shadow Ball this time. And that takes away most of Pelipper's health because it was a critical hit. And it lowers Pelipper's special defense. And after a few more roosting turns, a Giga Drain is finally able to take down the Pelican, meaning that the rain stops just before we switch out into Yin again, where she brings out Golisopod for a second time, meaning that we can safely use a Flamethrower to actually take it out this time. Back out comes Megami, as Nessa sends in her Seeking. He uses Aqua Ring, so then she starts to heal, and Giga Drain takes it all the way down into the yellow. But so even with the healing, it's not going to matter because one more Giga Drain will take it out. But not before the Seeking uses Mega Horn to do a bit of damage to Megami before we heal a bit. And the fish goes down. And the last Pokemon is Dreadnought, who I know is going to Gigantamax this turn, so I'm keeping in Megami and going for Giga Drain. But first of all, Dreadnought goes for Max Darkness, which of course is enough to give us a one-shot on Megami. So I switch into Namizu, but he does it again. But luckily it doesn't do too much damage to Namizu, it just lowers his special defense. So I go in for an Earthquake to do nearly half damage to the Dreadnought, and she goes for a G-Max Stone Surge to take out Namizu. So I switch in Orochi, he gets pointed into the stones, but luckily that turn the Dreadnought turns back to normal, and he uses Crunch to do pitiful damage to Orochi, lowering his defense in the process. But we go for a Dragon Rush to take out the Snapping Turtle and to beat Nessa again. And then after that, our next challenger is Alistair. He sends out his Dusknoir this time, So we start off with Namazu again. And our first move is Aqua Tail, but the Dusknoir Noir dodges it. So he uses Rock Tomb in response and does hardly anything to Namazu, apart from lower his speed. So we try again for another Aqua Tail, but of course he's faster, so we go for Shadow Punch, which again doesn't really do much. Yeah, Aqua Tail finally hits him for about a quarter of his health. But the Dusknoir Noir uses Disable, so meaning that we can't use Aqua Tail anymore. I try for Earthquake and it does hit, so it doesn't have Levitate, which brings the Dusknoir Noir down into the yellow. So I go for Muddy Water, but first he uses Shadow Punch to bring Namazu nearly down into half health. But the Surf misses, Muddy Water misses. So I just try again, and the same thing happens. He uses Shadow Punch. And Namazu actually uses Muddy Water this time to bring the Dusknoir Noir down to red. So I decide to do something risky and stay in, but Alistair uses a Full Restore on him, so we just hit him again for another Muddy Water. But this time we do lower Dusknoir Noir's accuracy, and Aqua Tail isn't disabled, so I go for that again. But he uses Shadow Punch. And Namazu lives on 3 health, so Aqua Tail hits, knocking Dusknoir Noir down into the yellow again. So this time we have to swap, and I swap it to Megami. And the Dusknoir Noir goes for Shadow Punch, but this time it does a bit more to Megami, knocking him down to nearly half. And he goes for it again. This time actually knocking Megami out because that was a high roll. So this time I don't do a stupid choice and I send in Yang and go for Dazzling Gleam, which takes him down into the red again. He goes for Rock Tomb. Not very effective, but it does lower his Yang's speed. So we go for another Dazzling Gleam again, finally knocking the Dusknoir Noir out. So the second one he sends out is a Chandelure. He goes for Mystical Fire to take Yang down into 8 health and lowers her special attack, which is a bit of an issue. But we go for Dazzling Gleam against the Chandelure, not doing that much damage. So we switch Yang for Yin, and he tries to use Mystical Fire, but we can't do because Yin has Flash Fire, meaning he can't use fire moves. So we try for an extra sensory to knock him down into half. Chandelure then goes for Shadow Ball to not really do that much to Yin. So we just keep on using extra sensory, take out Chandelure's health and makes the Chandelure faint. And this time I bring back Yang and send in Orochi again, who's now level 60. And Alistair sends out his Cursula, so we go for Crunch on the poor Coral Reef, and of course that one-shots it. So his next Pokemon is Polteageist, who goes for Nasty Plot to raise his special attack sharply. So we decide to go for Crunch, and 2 heads are better than 1, and we take out the Teapot. And now of course it's time for the most pain in the ass Pokemon, Gengar. So we stay in with Orochi, and we know he's going to Gigantamax, so I go for my Dynamax turn. So Gengar goes huge, so does Orochi. Gengar goes for Max Ooze first to take down Orochi's health by about a quarter, and of course raising his special attack again. But we go for Max Darkness, managing to one-shot the Gengar this time and winning us the match. Sorry, Alistair. So after that, we make our way back into the stadium to reface Raihan. So the first Pokemon we send out is Torkoal. So we start off with Namazu, and Torkoal has Drought, so that means he makes it a sunny day, which means the water type moves are weaker, which is kind of annoying, but we try for an Aqua Tail anyway. We just managed to land, and yeah, it does hardly anything because the sun's up. But Torkoal used Solar Beam, which is really sneaky, but an actual really clever play. And because of course the sun's already up, he can use it on his first turn. So that of course one-shots Namazu, unfortunately. But that does allow us to send in Yin, who uses a powered flamethrower to knock the Torkoal all the way into the red. But he uses Body Press which doesn't really do anything to our big graceful fox. So we go for another flamethrower, finish off the tortoise. Once again we switch out Yin for Yang, as Raihan sends out a second Pokemon, which is Flygon. So of course, because he's quarter weak to ice, I go for Ice Beam, which manages to hit and one-shot the ground dragon type. So Raihan sends in his Turtonator, who is a little bit of a threat to Yang because it's fire and dragon type, and he goes for a Shell Trap first of all. So we go for Ice Beam, knocking Turtonator down into half. Shell Trap didn't work because we used a special move, not a physical one. So we just go for another Ice Beam to leave him on a sliver of health. He sets up another Sunny Day. He sets us for another Shell Trap, and I go for Extra Sensory to take down that Tortoise Dragon. And of course he sends in his adorable Goodra next, so we keep Yin in. And the first move we're going to do is Ice Beam on the pure Dragon type to take it down into about half health. Now Goodra sets up the Rain Dance, meaning that the fire moves aren't as effective against it. Water type moves are stronger now, which is an interesting choice to the former ground user, but it doesn't matter to us because we just go for another Ice Beam. Goodra lives on a sliver, and of course she uses Surf, which doesn't do that much to Yang, thankfully. So we go for Extra Sensory now to take out the dragon. Now his next Pokemon is again a bit of a threat to Yang, but we're going to keep her in. His Duraludon, who hit Gigantamaxes, and we managed to hit him with the Dazzling Gleam, which doesn't do too much, and he hits us with a Max Steel Spike, which I totally forgot that Yang is super allergic to, being Ice and Fairy. And he gets a Defense Rise and Yang faints. So I send in her big sister, I Dynamax her, and I use a Max Flare to take the Steel type into the red. And of course we set up another Sunny Day, but of course he retaliates with a Max Rockfall, and that sets up the Sandstorm. How many weathers are we going to see in this battle? Who knows? But of course Yin's buffeted by it, but so is Duraludon slightly, I think. So of course we use one more Max Flare, Duraludon explodes, and that wins us this match against Raihan. So after a couple more bits, we go ahead to face Leon, but unfortunately we get interrupted by Chairman Rose telling everyone that he's evil. So of course we both run out the stadium. Then after we do that we go pick up our Monster Hunter weapons. We confront Chairman Rose, who of course wants to have a Pokemon battle with us. And his first Pokemon is Escavalier, which is really unfortunate for him because we start off with Yin. And the first move is going to be Flamethrower, so one-shot his first Peep. And his next Pokemon is Klinklang, so we do his Flamethrower again to take it down in one shot too, before he brings out his Ferrothorn. Someone else is also quarter weak to fire, so we one-shot it with Flamethrower too, as well as his Berserker. And we hit his Gigantamax Copperajah down into yellow, so of course it uses G-Max Quake, which is a critical hit, and it takes down Yin. So we send in Nemazu to our Dynamax, and we use G-Max Quake back to take down this huge elephant and win us the fight against Chairman Rose. So we make our way up the stairs, where we finally meet the giant dragon that Chairman Rose was up to. Leon tries to capture it, which of course fails, so now actually breaks the Pokeball. So now of course it's angry. So now we're having a battle with Eternatus, so I send out Orochi first. But Eternatus has its pressure. And the first move I use with Orochi is Dragon Pulse, but of course he does it first, which unfortunately knocks him out. So I send in Yang, and I go for Dragon Pulse, but it doesn't. Ice Beam. I go for Ice Beam with Yang to knock him down into the half health. He tries for Dragon Pulse, but it doesn't affect Yang because she's part Fairy. So we just go for another Ice Beam to take him down into the red. He tries to go for Dynamax Cannon, which is again another dragon move. So we say no. We hit him with a Confuse Ray, just in case. And he tries to go for another Dynamax Cannon, just before we hit him with a Dazzling Gleam, which does take him down, but only extremely temporarily, because he shoots for the sky, and he changes into Gigantamax form. So now he's G-Max Eternatus. And of course we send in Orochi again, but this time Hop's gonna help. But I've learned from last time and I'm sending Orochi back. I'm calling out Yang. Eternatus is just storing our energy, but of course it turns out that we can't use any of our moves against him, no matter how hard we try. So in a really cool cutscene, it looks like all hope is lost. But then we get some help in the form of Zacian and Zamazenta. And after giving them our weapons, they both turn into their true forms. And they both decide to join us for the battle. So Zacian uses Howl to raise our physical attack. And Zamazenta uses Light Screen to help against Eternamax's special attacks. But Eternamax uses Max Whirlwind on Orochi, which of course faints him. Well, Hopstable attempts to use Double Edge, which doesn't really do that much. I switch back into Yang, and Max revive Orochi. Zacian uses Behemoth Blade, which is a really cool looking move, doing an actual decent amount of damage to Eternatus. Zamazenta uses Behemoth Blade, or Behemoth Bash. Eternatus goes for Max Flare, which does quite a bit of damage to Zamazenta, and it makes a Sunlight turn harsh. But Double goes for another Double Edge, and after a few more turns of Behemoth Blades and Behemoth Bashes, but one more crunch later, and after a really cool cutscene, we manage to catch him in a Pokeball, and the two wolves howl and go back to where they were. And 3 days later we go back to the stadium, where we finally face off against champion Leon. We start off with an Aegislash. And so we start off with Orochi. And the first move we use is Crunch. We send it down all the way into the red. Aegislash stance changes into Blade form, which means that his physical attacks will hit harder now. He uses Sacred Sword, which knocks Orochi down into the yellow. Leon uses Full Restore already, so we just go for another Crunch. And this time it's a high roll, so we manage to one-shot Aegislash. And of course the next Pokemon is Haxorus, so we switch into Yang, as Leon sends him out. Her out rather, as Leon sends her out. We decide to go for Dazzling Gleam, but of course he uses Iron Tail. Which one-shots Yang. So I does send out Namizu, and the Haxorus uses Outrage to send Namizu all the way down to 39 health, as we go for an Earthquake, which knocks Haxorus down by about a third. So I max revive Yang, anticipating that Namizu's going to go down to another Outrage, but because of that he's become confused. As the next up I send in Yin. He manages to hit with a Flamethrower, and of course it doesn't really do too much, but it does knock her down into the yellow. But Haxorus is confused, but she retaliates with an Earthquake that leaves Yin on just 7 health. So I decide to go for Disable, which means that Haxorus can't use Earthquake anymore. So then we managed to hang in there and go with a Flamethrower, because he was going to use Earthquake again. The Haxorus is still confused, but we avoid the attack of Iron Tail coming towards us. So Yang hits with an extra sensory, knocking the Haxorus down. Oh my god! So now we're going to switch out Yin, because we got extremely lucky, into Mogami, as Leon sends in his Inteleon, who uses Tearful Look on Mogami to lower his attack and special attack. So we go for Giga Drain, which of course takes Inteleon nearly down to half health, but we do heal a bit. And Leon just goes for Tearful Look again to lower our attacks, but we just go for another Giga Drain to send Inteleon down into the yellow now. But this time he decides to be smart and go for Dark Pulse, which of course actually faints Mogami this time. So now we can send in Kaminari, who after another Tearful Look finishes off Inteleon with a Discharge. And after that he sends in his Dragapult, who uses Shadow Ball. to knock Kaminari down to 39 health. We retaliate with a bite, which doesn't really do that much to Dragapult. So I decide to use Full Restore on Yin. My Dragapult goes for another Shadow Ball. There was of course a critical hit to knock him out. But Dragapult responds with Flamethrower, which of course leaves Yang in the yellow because it was a critical hit. I go for Dazzling Gleam, which of course leaves Dragapult in the red. So of course I use Revive on Namazu. Ready for later as Yang gets hit with another Flamethrower, knocking her out. So because he's spamming fire moves, I send in Yin again. And now he decides to use Shadow Ball. That doesn't do too much to Yin, and she retaliates with a Flamethrower of her own to take down Dragapult. And Leon's next Pokemon is Mr. Rhyme, who in my opinion is a really cool Pokemon and has a really quirky design. But regardless of that, we have Yin do Flamethrower to take him down into the yellow. And Mr. Rhyme regards that with Psychic to take Yin nearly down into the red. So we just do one more Flamethrower to finish him off. And Leon now sends in his Charizard. So the first thing I'm going to do is heal up Orochi. As he Gigantamaxes his Charizard, who of course uses Max Rockfall as his first move, who makes a Sandstorm and knocks Yin out for his first turn. He gets buffeted by his own Sandstorm. Now for his second turn I decide to send in Orochi and Dynamax him. The Charizard uses Max Airstream, leaving Orochi on 42 health, and it raises Charizard's speed unfortunately, but we respond with damage with a Max Whirlwind, taking Charizard down into the yellow, lowering Charizard's physical attack just before he gets buffeted by the Sandstorm. And I decide to use a Super Potion on Orochi, as Charizard uses Max Airstream again to raise his speed. Orochi goes down unfortunately, as Charizard's buffeted by the Sandstorm, as we send out our last Pokemon, Namazu. But fortunately for us though, Charizard goes down to normal. He uses Air Slash and knocks Namazu down. Okay, well that's attempt number 1 out the way. Now on our second attempt, when he sends out Aegislash, I start with Yin. I manage to take him down with a couple of Flamethrowers. And because we know his second Pokemon is Haxorus with Earthquake, we send in Namazu. He uses Outrage again, so we retaliate with a strong Earthquake. And after quite a few turns though, we hit him with Dazzling Gleam because he kept on using Outrage and then hitting himself with Confusion, so he knocks himself out. And again, because we know he's going to use Dragapult with Flamethrower now, we send in Yin. He uses Shadow Ball first to not really do that much to Yin, so we use Extra Sensory a few times, finish off the Dragapult. And afterwards we switch out into Kaminari, because he sent in his Inteleon next, but we managed to hit with the Thunder, taking him down. And I decide to switch Kaminari for Yin, as he sent in his Mr. Rhyme, who goes down to one Flamethrower. And because the next Pokemon is going to be Charizard, I send out Kaminari. He gets hit with a Max Airstream, but we manage to hit Charizard with a G-Max Lightning, sending him down into yellow. I use a Full Restore. He goes for his signature with his G-Max Wildfire, which was a critical hit, so it does blow up Kaminari. So I descend in Orochi, who survived with Max Rockfall. I need to get caught up in them G-Max Wildfire's flames, but luckily though Charizard does return to normal on that turn. Charizard uses Fire Blast, which just doesn't do that much, and then manages a hit with another Fire Blast, which knocks Orochi out. So I send in Yin, but he goes for another Fire Blast, which because of Yin's extra sensory, because of Yin's Flash Fire can't be hit by it, so we go for an extra sensory. It doesn't quite knock Charizard down, but because of the Sandstorm, he gets chip damage in and he faints. Wow, knocks out by your own Sandstorm. But yep, that means that we are now the champions and that we've beaten Leon. So the question is, can you beat Pokemon Sword using only yokai Pokemon? Yes you can do. it is very much an uphill struggle for most of the game, and you do have to do quite a bit of grinding, like I did with Orochi. But yeah, it was a really, really fun run. I can't wait to do the next one, and whatever ideas you guys come up with, if any. But yeah, it was cool, and I really, really enjoyed looking into all the different kind of yokai and stuff, and Japanese myths and legends as well. But yeah, that was really, really cool, and I'm super, super glad I did another challenge, another one of these videos. I hope you enjoyed it. Thankfully, it's not as long as the last one. But yeah, all I'm going to say is I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a good one. Bye-bye. And I'll let you watch the closing cutscene.